I'm meteorologist Evan Stewart with your Tropics update here at 8 p.m. on Friday, September 22nd. Of course, the latest advisory just in on Tropical Storm Ophelia, and it's a strong tropical storm with winds of 70 miles per hour. Now, we are seeing the rain across the region here in eastern Virginia and North Carolina. Even those bands now working their way back towards Farmville, approaching Lynchburg and Charlottesville. A little bit of a gap here from Emporia towards Williamsburg into the Chesapeake Bay, but that's sort of just this banding that we're seeing, which is very typical of a tropical system, and those bands and those waves of heavy rain will continue as we go here through the evening, as the storm is still about 90 miles offshore of the North Carolina coastline. But you can see it spinning in there as we take a look at the radar. Here's Cape Fear, here's Cape Lookout, and it's going to continue to move north, probably come ashore somewhere just west of Cape Lookout, not too far from Morehead City, Newport, North Carolina, and then sort of work its way up Interstate 95, at least the center. Now, one thing to take note, this is a very front-loaded system. We're seeing some of the heaviest of the rain on the north and western side of it. There is rain out here. It's a little far for the radars to reach, but we are seeing dry air getting pulled into this system, and that could have an impact on this Saturday forecast, certainly at least through eastern Virginia and North Carolina. Maybe not as much rain as central Virginia and North Carolina would see closer to the center of circulation. Here's that 8 o'clock advisory, winds of 70 miles per hour, gusts to 85, moving to the north-northwest at 12. It's expected to make landfall late tonight, early tomorrow morning, say around 2, 3 o'clock in the morning. As we mentioned, fairly close to Cape Lookout, North Carolina. Winds of 70 miles per hour. Wouldn't be much to make it a hurricane. That would be 75 mile per hour winds. But whether it's a 70 mile per hour tropical storm, 75 mile per hour hurricane doesn't make a lick of difference in the conditions that we are going to see here across eastern Virginia, North Carolina overnight and into the day on Saturday. And it's going to quickly start to weaken as it works its way northward, crossing the state line about a little after midday tomorrow, and then continuing to fizzle out up towards Washington, D.C. and New York as we head into early Monday morning. Now, at the top of the 8 o'clock hour, these were the wind speeds that were reported at all the area airports. A few of them are missing, haven't had wind gusts that strong. A couple others, we don't get those wind speed reports out of a few of them. But you can see wind gusts over 50 miles per hour in Virginia Beach, 48 mile per hour gust in Norfolk, 46 up at Wallops Island, 33 in Elizabeth City, and 40 in Manio. And we had higher gusts than that as we've gone through the afternoon. These are the peak wind gusts, the highest that we've seen all day today. You can see Norfolk International had a wind gust of 55 miles per hour. There have been a few flights that have been canceled and delayed at Norfolk International. So likely because of those gusty winds. 52 mile per hour gust in Virginia Beach, and 51, one of the highest gusts in Wallops Island. Not as strong in the inland spots, but you've still seen gusts well over 20 miles per hour and gusts over 30 back towards Ahoskie and Edenton. Now, as we take a look at what's going on out in the ocean, we use buoys and we use ship reports, and the buoys are not nearly as many as there are, of course, land reports. But you can see here out at Diamond Shoals Light, winds of 38 miles per hour, but 19-foot seas, and that's why we're concerned about overwash along Highway 12 with some of those big waves coming ashore. And even here, buoy number 14, that's about 64 miles east of Virginia Beach, 54 mile per hour winds there with 18-foot waves. Once you get out there quite a bit farther, about 150 miles east of Cape Hatteras, buoy number 1, 36 mile per hour winds and 12-foot waves. So again, these nearshore waves are pretty high. Even down here, number 13, that's Frying Pan Shoals there, 60 mile per hour winds and a 17 mile per hour surf height and waves. So again, big waves coming ashore, one of the issues we're concerned about through the Outer Banks of North Carolina. Of course, the other big concern is some of the heavy rain that we've already seen. This is at least as of midnight, and it started raining earlier across North Carolina, so naturally we've seen some of the higher rainfall amounts there from Edenton over towards Elizabeth City, but Chesapeake almost 1.5 inches of rain, nearing on 3/4 of an inch in Virginia Beach, a 1/2 inch in Currituck, not as much towards Manio, but you can certainly see that corridor of heavier rain, and that is continuing to work its way off towards the north. And we're looking still at the potential for 3 to 4 inches of rain in some spots, 2 to 4. This has shifted inland just a little bit. You were watching some of our videos yesterday. It was closer to the coastline, but considering that track is going to go up Interstate 95, that's where we've now moved some of the heavier rainfall amounts closer to the center track. Of course, Western Virginia, North Carolina, not seeing much at all. But even if we only see a couple inches, if it all comes down in a short period of time with one of these heavier downpours, that could cause some flooding. And flash flooding or flooding of roadways is very possible to eastern Virginia and North Carolina as we go through Saturday morning. It's likely down here closer to where the storm is making landfall and over towards the Pamlico Sound, the Pamlico River, possible in central Virginia. So let's sort of time things out here with Futurecast as we go here through the remainder of the evening and the overnight, these rounds of heavy rain. We'll see those gusty winds. After midnight, I think a lot of the heaviest of the rain will start to lift towards the north as that center gets a little bit closer. So we'll start the day Saturday with a few showers and thunderstorms, but I mentioned how this storm is lopsided. There's not a lot of rain on the eastern and southern sides, and if we get some of that dry air being pulled in, eastern Virginia, North Carolina, as we go through tomorrow afternoon, might not see as much rain. Might be more concentrated towards Interstate 95, closer to the center of circulation and the path of the storm. It is still going to be breezy to windy tomorrow, any way you slice it. And we'll continue to see those gusty winds as we head into Saturday night and early Sunday morning. Still clouds around, chance of a few morning showers. Notice those winds, though, switching as the storm passes by from the northeast and the east over towards the southwest, and that'll certainly help on Sunday with some of the issues with the tides, because when you get those easterly winds, it pushes the water up the Chesapeake Bay, up the James, the York, the Rappahannock, through all of the little inlets. But then when you get those southwest winds, it sort of blows that water back out, so that'll certainly help with those tide conditions into the day on Sunday. So let's talk about the tides. Sewell's Point this afternoon, high tide got up to 4.8. That's considered minor or nuisance tidal flooding. That starts at 4.5 and goes to 5.5. Once we get up to over 6, that's when you're getting closer to moderate, and major tidal flooding begins at 6.5 feet at Sewell's Point. So we'll be close to that during the overnight. This is 3 a.m. in the morning, so during the darkness with the wind and the rain, we will see those tide levels coming up, but they will only last through about one high tide cycle, some moderate tidal flooding Saturday afternoon, water levels continuing to go down as we head into Sunday as those winds switch around. A little bit of a different story for Yorktown. This afternoon's high tide came in at 4.5 feet. Expecting major tidal flooding, that begins at 5.5 in Yorktown, and we're forecasting 5.7. So that could cause some issues, and not just in Yorktown, but even across the James River down towards Jamestown. On the other side of the peninsula will be some issues with some flooding as well. Even into Saturday afternoon, it won't be as high as overnight, but still looking at some significant flooding issues into Saturday afternoon, finally starting to improve as we head into Sunday. And finally, Duck, Outer Banks of North Carolina, the bigger concern there, at least initially, will be the overwash on Highway 12 from some of those big waves that we were talking about. Then maybe some sound side flooding as the storm exits later into the day on Saturday. But you'll notice those tide levels not looking too bad for Duck. We had some nuisance flooding earlier this afternoon, and then as we go through the overnight, we're not expecting any kind of significant issues with flooding through the Outer Banks. Of course, we'll have updates as the Hurricane Center updates us, and we'll keep you updated here on air and online.